in work session now. Welcome back. 13.1 district goals.
Okay. So, yeah, we're just gonna march on and do our thing here. We've got all the players here anyway, that he has it broke out by. Pretty much everything stayed the same as far as the motto, prepare today for successful tomorrow. Vision and mission stayed the same as last year. So we can move right on into the 5 areas, which those stayed the same: the district climate, teaching and learning facilities, extracurricular student activities, and of course community relations. Everybody is here that were chairs on each of those, so we can start with the district climate. I don't remember who was district climate, but one of you.
We got it. We're good.
One of you peeps.
We are. We did rework the core belief statements just a little bit, but it was just minor wordsmithing type stuff, so if you have questions for us, let us know. But we did do a little work and revisit those just because sometimes those fresh eyes, after you've let them sit for a year, helps out. So Mr. Stratton and I are going to tag team district climate and teaching and learning as it applies to our buildings. So we'll both be talking about that, and then we'll move on from there. In district climate, our first goal is high expectations for our students and staff. And then the performance indicators underneath there start with Mr. Stratton.
We increased the implementation of our AVID strategies. I thought this year was a great deal with our AVID, the way the AVID site team put together. Instead of everybody doing a little bit of everything, we concentrated. So you concentrated on writing, or you concentrated on collaboration, organization, or reading. And then we tied that into the formative assessment. Our PLC, we brought 2 things together, AVID and PLC, and we'll continue to do that next year. And already got a couple ideas on what we're doing, looking at data, focusing on 9th grade on track, and pulling some things together for that PLC piece.
On B, for elementary staff members, will implement PLCs, which are professional learning communities. Mr. Richards, that comes down as a consultant, has looked at my structure, and he really thinks that I need to revamp that a little bit. So what will happen this next year is that reading and math will remain a formal PLC with a little more formal type procedure and process for them to set goals and have more measurable data-based outcomes. And then the others will remain committees. So I'll continue to have a PBIS committee and a grants committee and climate and community within my elementary school structure. But we want to formalize the reading and math to be a little more data-driven, and Dean's going to help us a little bit with that. So those are in place this year, but will continue next year. We'd like to see a little bit more focus within these PLCs on common assessments and our teachers grading everything the same way when they're giving a common assessment in our Engaged New York Math and with our reading curriculum. They'll also be looking at a reading adoption for next year, so that PLC will be investigating what is on the state adopted list for reading curriculum and looking at that, because we've deferred a lot of adoptions at the elementary level, and reading is not one we want to defer. We want to look at what's out there for our kiddos. And then in C, elementary schools, monthly assemblies and bonus activities. We've done quite a bit of work with our PBS committee in making sure that we have data-driven decisions out of this PLC. So we collect data behaviorally through LBL, but we also put all of those kids in our last data team meeting into tiers. So we have transition plans. Right now, our school counselor knows what kids coming into the next grade level are going to need behavioral transition plans, and they've either been identified as within the classroom, where the teacher's going to just do some structuring with that child behaviorally, or we need a full-blown transition plan with parents, counselor, principal, teacher all on board before we start school, so that we can make sure that that child is successful. That's one of the things that has come out of that work this year. We continue to have monthly assemblies. We're going to continue to have split assemblies. We had some mixed ones together, and it's just a little too long for the little guys, but we're going to have split PBIS assemblies for academic recognition, behavior, and attendance. And we've done that for the last couple of years. Union has a growth mindset program, and we're going to look at that in town at Fremont Hay, and they honor that growth mindset program at the Student of the Month assemblies, and it has been effective. They don't have a lot of behavior out there, but it sure has got some kids thinking in a little bit different mindset. For example, when they come up against a math problem, instead of saying I can't and having a little fit, they're saying, I can't do this yet, but I'm gonna get there. And they really are developing some tools for when they get frustrated or when they experience they aren't having academic success. And then just kind of a follow-up with that, all our assemblies reinforce 100% attendance each month at both schools, or all 3 schools, citizenship and academic achievement. And we've actually upped the 5th grade academic achievement in the handbook just a tad. And we'll get to that. So.
D, the community partnerships in conjunction with the administrative team to improve attendance. Mr. Rose and Ms. Harris, along with Mr. Thompson and Deanna Thompson, have worked really hard on attendance and getting some of our chronic people back to school on time. And then we do have our monthly meetings with the community partners that we talked about earlier. That helps.
And I think the district office, with Mr. Cahill, they'll continue to support us in the teacher appreciation weeks, the staff and student celebrations recognizing success that he has on here. And I think he plans to continue the listening sessions unless someone knows differently. The second goal that we have in our district revolves around the teaching and learning, improvement of instructional strategies and student growth. The first one is a little bit high school, but mostly elementary. We wanted to continue to train certified classified staff instructional strategies. So that's where Dean Richards and Janice Heigl coming in to help us. We're including our paraprofessionals in that. We're including our ancillary staff in that if it's applicable, and our certified staff in a small group session so that they get the most out of it. And we use that House Bill 3499 funding to fund that. For example, when they're coming to the elementary school, the certified staff go out and take all the duties for the paraprofessionals so they can go in and spend the first 45 minutes of the day with the consultants. And they can ask the questions that are relevant to them and what they're doing in their small group work with a SPED student, for example, in math. And it's been really, they're feeling valued, they're feeling like they have control of what they're doing, and they have way more, they're empowered to do their jobs a little better. We'll continue to keep the consultants, if that's what Mr. Stratton would like to do with the House Bill 3499 funding to help support our staff and best practices. The third one is continue to increase instructional skills of paraprofessionals by advancing professional development activities. We sent 4 paraprofessionals to the RTI conference this year, and they came back with quite a few skills as far as what they were being asked to do in small group for Title I reading strategies and for small group math strategies.
And we'll continue at the high school to look at teaching strategies, maybe that differentiated piece using Janice Heigl and Dean Richards. And that will be what we'll do on that for high school this week. Be there communication, and I think probably it'll probably be 90% of my teachers in their end of the year summative. I wrote one of the boxes about communication. I said, how can we flood our community with the great stuff we're doing here? So that was one of my goals that we'll be doing next year, is sharing more of the great stuff that we're doing in the classroom, in the playing field, and in the community. Just doing a better job so that the negative people don't have time to be negative. So that'll be one of the big pushes next year on that piece. And then working again with that school email and messenger system, which I think was a great tool this year. It did a lot of good stuff for us. It helped not allow the negativism, especially on the Facebook side of it. But our legislatures are trying really hard to make the robocall systems illegal. There was actually a webinar last week on Wednesday that Mr. Cahill watched that was recommended for us to watch through the company that has our school messenger. So we might have to do some things to be able to still use that.
We don't have to accept it.
Yeah, it's the whole opt-out piece that we're trying to, we'll see what happens, because I really don't think that this is.
What's the concern?
Well, the robocalls, the people that are calling trying to get you to buy things or whatever, you know, it's trying to,
So it's not targeting the school's robocall?
no, it's those,
Lady from Marriott
Sales,
that calls me all the time.
yeah, exactly. So that commercial you hear every morning at 7:30, it's in between the golf course and the sewer ponds. It usually comes comes on. Hi, Frank, and I'd like to tell you something, blah, 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 blah. But anyway, this is the robocall stuff. That's what it is. You guys obviously don't listen to the radio.
I don't
Same
answer the
commercial.
phone. I'm serious.
Okay. Well, how
Well,
serious
now
you
they
are.
show up as Lakeview numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah. I climb with numbers.
And I think I've asked everybody to do, to continue with part C, use more with our Facebook and our district webpage. I actually was, a parent asked me a question the other day, and I went on our district webpage, and I went to the high school, and I was like, wow, and I called the parent back up, and I said, do you know that's, the two things you asked about are on our webpage, and they're probably one of the coolest links on our webpage? She goes, no. And we have a senior page on the webpage, and it's amazing what's on there for the high school seniors by month. What they need to do, what they need to turn in, what's going on, and then the daily bulletins on the webpage. So I think we just need to get that information out more. I'm cruising along there, Miss Warner. D, professional development related to poverty and its impact. Continue professional development, early release Mondays, and addressing specific issues with student learning. And then we've tried the mental health aid first training for staff offered by PACE. I didn't get anybody to go to it. So we'll see if we continue that, because I think that mental health piece is huge in all communities, not just ours or the school. And the next one, utilize technology to improve teacher instruction. Let me see if Mr. Cato's done this technology plan. He is gonna work, he's talked about all the admin needs that him and Mr. Reese will work on.
This one.
Yeah, this summer to get that tech plan done.
Question.
Yeah.
I know it's not really possible otherwise, but is there any work being done with substitute teachers?
To train them.
Just give them a little something, because we gave that little evaluation. To try to incorporate
In what
that.
capacity, Mary?
Just
Like
giving them,
Professional development, or,
They're always welcome to come to professional development for the,
I don't think we knew that, so.
in its
Yeah, I think we
evaluation.
talked about it.
we have the elementary teachers or substitutes that come on different professional development days.
Because
Like,
they get PDUs.
Yeah,
they
Kathy
have-
Miles
they
comes
get
to all of
PDUs
ours.
to keep their license up. But I think, are you talking about professional development and teaching strategies, or just more of a training to say, this is how the classroom should be ran, this is how we'd like you to do this type of stuff, or just
yeah,
maybe of
Yes.
everything?
All the above.
all of the above.
Well,
Especially
Is
if they're
anything
on the
being
call
done for
list
them,
and they're new.
or are we just giving them a cold?
and we even talked about that potentially we'd be willing to pay them for a few hours to come and take part in some of this stuff. And I think some of that was the beginning of the year, those few days.
Of the
before
teaching
school
service.
Oh,
starts.
the in-service week.
And maybe
Yeah.
just hook them
Now, was that
in.
certified only, or was that certified and classified?
I think it was probably,
We were just focused on substitute teachers.
One for
Oh,
both.
so just the certified.
just a certified, yeah.
I'm gonna say no, at the elementary level, they aren't getting a lot of front-loaded information as to how to do the substitute job, because it changes every time they come in, but they're given a schedule and a contact person besides a secretary, like in the sped room, it's either Kayla or one of the other aides. But as far as formal training, no. On the professional development side of this, as far as having access to this, they don't know that it's out there, but if they approach us and say, can we join in on this, and they want to, we've always let them. Even other districts have come down and participated in the House Bill 3499 stuff. We had a teacher out of Paisley that wanted to get some extra PDUs and came down and did some of that. And we could probably do a better job making it more out there as far as, I just never really thought about how to get a hold and get that information out to all those people, because I struggled to get it to my own people.
Well, and I can help in that regard. I mean, I'm in good contact with all of the subs, classified and
The secretaries
certified.
probably could too.
And Emma has created a really cool packet for substitutes, and she shared it with me. And it's pretty awesome. And I can make many of those packets and get them to them.
The biggest thing we train our substitute teachers at the elementary level on is the safety protocol, and talk them through that, or the teachers are supposed to and have it available to them when they walk in. I don't think it's always happening. We're trying to do a better job of it.
And that is something too that I just was recently called about from a sub, asking that maybe next year when there are drills and what have you at your guys' buildings, if we could let them know so that they could pop in, because what happens if something happens for real and they have no idea what's going on?
And it has happened.
So if you guys just communicate with me when those drills are gonna take place, I'd be happy to call them all for you.
Do you run the drills on the in-service week or anything? So that's what we were thinking, is
No.
tag on to that week and put them for a couple days.
No, but I could, we could start.
So,
I know my
Absolutely do that.
old district, we ran a full day of sub-training, and each principal taught, a substation. So they went around from substation to substation, and the principals and, district people taught something for a full day and paid them, and that helps. But I agree with you guys, you know, that sometimes we have more subs in our building than we actually do have teachers. If we were to have something catastrophically go.
You don't have to have a teaching license to be a sub. So it's not like you really have a lot of backup.
Kitchen.
I mean, there's, and I know that you guys start out with the teachers that are licensed in the sub world, but then it rolls to these others that.
And sometimes the license doesn't mean that they're the best sub either. I mean, I'll say it, I mean, we have some people further down the list that do a better job in the classroom, but the law makes us
Right. You have to
go where we're
work.
at, but I agree with you, we could probably put something together.
Well, and I know that when we talked about it, it was, you know, can we do it in that week when there's all kinds of new training and handbook and all these things going on, that in-service week or 3 days, whatever it is, can we?
They're invited to that first
Oh,
morning
there.
breakfast, and when we go through all the mandatory policies reviews and stuff, they're invited that morning to substitutes.
And do we, you know, obviously there's probably a group of them that we use quite a bit and others that are more casual. I think in our conversation, we wouldn't necessarily take for everybody, but kind of the boulders of interest.
Well,
That maybe we use a lot of, and they're consistently in our building. And I guess the last thing I don't know is, when they sub on a Wednesday, when it gets to early release, they go, don't they? Or do they stay around?
Kind of depends. Sometimes they'll grade papers, but they don't always have a full day of stuff to do because they have graded all the papers and cut everything the teacher has left them to do, and lots of them don't feel comfortable going above what the teachers laid out and told them to do.
So I guess, can you get PDUs by going to on Wednesdays? I thought you could. So are we inviting them to be a part of that at all, or would that even make sense?
It depends. If it's PLCs, lots of times they don't feel comfortable jumping into those. But staff meetings, we have one substitute that goes to everything, and she comes to our staff meetings from time to time. She comes to my staff meetings a union.
well, do we
But that would
pay
just
them
be an
for
area
a
that maybe.
full day? So if we're paying them for the full day, they ought to stick around and do something.
You know, on the flip side, it's Wednesdays, but I would say, especially at the high school, most days when somebody subs, we're also asking them to sub during that teacher's prep period. So on a regular day, we get a lot out of them,
Okay.
so letting them go on a Wednesday, I think is a wash.
And I'm just gonna throw a little, so we're talking larger scale things, safety and protocols
Yeah.
and stuff. But even to the everyday milieu of bathroom use, you know, what's your frequency? Does Bobby Sue over here go 50 times and roam the halls, or, you know, just,
And that needs to
more
almost be
helpful.
the teacher.
Yeah.
That is
yeah,
communicated
and
from the
they're really
teacher.
at that level,
Don't
but
let
that
these two sit
was
together,
all
because they're gonna be
encompassed, so-
possessed.
No, we wouldn't, the building administration would not take care of that. That's the responsibility of the teacher to put in their lesson plans when they're gone. If it's an emergency situation, we'll pull a schedule and match them up with a teaching partner or, you know, the high school or department person, so that they have questions about those things, they can go to that person. But administratively, we don't know sometimes who shouldn't sit together or how many times you're gonna go to the bathroom,
right,
those things.
but maybe if that message just kind of continues and down the ladder to just help teachers remember that if a new person comes in, you know, just those little things that might be helpful.
Yeah, they're required to do that, and they do a pretty good job when they're gone, because they don't want problems, they don't want me in their classroom. I mean, they want things to go well and learning to happen when they're gone, so.
You'll see there are things in your staff handbook, some extra wording too on something, so. it's done.
I guess I was just gonna wrap that up by saying it substitutes are a necessary and vital part of our educational system. And I think there's a lot of support from the board to hold them in to maybe other things than just, here's your classroom, sit there for an hour.
It was apparent to the board, I think everybody has kids in the school system and they see it, you know. So it's just something we want to bring to your attention. We don't know if you thought about it. And we sure like to see if it's possible, something that they can be involved in that helps them get better.
So do you want some sort of verbiage on the goals, or do you just want impact type of situation?
What do you think?
We could bring back something to, leave it out of the goals if you want to bring back something with building.
Well, it
Ideas
could
of how we
be
do that.
something as simple as a bullet in here, in the professional development piece that, you know, fairly vague, because it's gonna depend on how it shakes out.
What you guys figured out.
But, you know, a bullet of some sort that, you know, something will be.
Provided.
Yeah, something will be provided for the substitutes.
And
for
we've
the
talked
district.
about it.
Okay. And we all agree
The district will provide opportunity for professional development and training for substitutes.
So you guys can look at that.
Yeah, and I think it, under teaching and learning is where we're going, I'll just make it.
Yeah. Is it E or F after that? Yeah, E, that's right.
I think I'd leave it as simple as we'll look for opportunities.
Yeah. Don't hold
Because I
yourself
mean, it's gonna take a while to
You can't
think on
catch.
how to interview, so.
Right, make it pretty general, so it is, yeah. So,
And then the last one, the tech plans all schools would like to utilize for the physical computer lab space more efficiently by purchasing mobile Chromebook labs. And to add to that, I purchased 2 more labs this year. Both of them, I'm sure I said this, they're both in the CTE area. So one in the family consumer science classroom and one in the ag classroom, both got mobile labs.
30 apiece.
Yeah.
What do you
30
30 apiece.
30 machines in the labs.
So I was writing, Lane, you were talking about the high school and Chromebook labs.
Yeah, it was the last piece of technology. I think we're done. It's under 3 facilities.
Evan is putting together one for Fremont, one for Hay, and then we're looking for some money, because they didn't budget any at Union for a few more Chromebooks, in the K1 room out of Union. So, but we are getting rid of a computer lab at Hay.
So Chrome is a brand, right?
Google Chrome.
It's kind of
Everybody
their own,
likes
Tablets with a,
it's kind of their own operating system, Chrome, Google.
My
I guess
only
my-
thing is they don't know how to hard save something. When they switch over and you're making them use Word or Excel, they just think it magically saves because in the Chrome
It
stuff,
does automatically.
it
it
does.
does, yeah.
So each lab is a 10, those,
No, 30. It's usually 20 to 25 to 30 bucks.
Yeah.
you buy 2 of those if you need.
Did buy it.
I bought.
I guess that brings home my point, that my biggest concern, I've had this for years, is here we just added 60 or 50 to 60 Chromebooks, and, you know, they're all the same vintage, same era, same purchase date. What happens when 4-year-olds go down? Or that system is no longer compatible with all these other things out there, and we gotta replace it.
Well, how many Well, do we and have that's- total?
Well,
And so that's my biggest concern is, we need to increase what we got, but we also gotta be looking down the road of how are we gonna maintain those.
and
And
Evan,
if you look at under E, Dustin, it says a 5-year district technology plan will be developed in the summer of 2013. So
We're not there yet.
forecasting those out, please. Yes.
and our issue is space, and these labs give us more classroom space, so that we can have smaller classroom sizes, and I think that's why they did that at LHS as well, as they were limited space. And these have been more reliable in our testing situations than our desktops have been by quite a bit. So our teachers prefer using them, and so my plan is to just, with the district plan, is to just build X amount of dollars. You have to continue to replace all the time. But they've been pretty reliable. We've had a lab in there for a couple of years, one lab at Hay. And so I'm hoping that we can just start cycling through problems and keep money budgeted there.
I just know my employment, we only have 15, 20 computers, and all of a sudden, some days we gotta, everything's gotta be this operating system or above, and you have until September to replace 7 of them. So, thanks, you know? That's a real thing with
It is.
technology, so it's just, we need to be thinking of it.
Okay. Good discussion.
You guys So on to the facilities piece of this. So we continue to just improve our infrastructure. We've got a few grant funds to help us do that. Of course, we're keeping in the back of our mind the safety, security, and on the overall building maintenance, which the building maintenance has been so deferred for so long that it's a struggle.
That's not the right word.
What's that? Well, struggle was polite. So what we have on tap for 1920 is the long-range facility plan, which we discussed that in our budgeting process. Cooperative Strategies has been contracted. You guys have okayed that. They're currently doing phase 1, which is the wants and needs by buildings and categorizing them into priority, whether that's safety, structural, the whole gamut of everything. And I'm working with them pretty closely for that overall scope to eventually get down to that campaign for the bond in the 2020 year, which is down the road. But they are in phase 1, and that's the long and short of phase 1. Phase 2 will start after the first of the year, and that's more meetings, that's more deliverables on the long-range facility plan, that sort of thing. The next item that needs to be finished up in the 1920 year is we still have some funds for the ILC main floor on the north wing. We completed that with the restrooms on the main floor. There is a computer lab type situation that they want to install in a smaller size classroom next to the step-up building, or step-up room, excuse me. And that does not mean we do the computer lab. What that means is we do the structure. You can see through the floor down to the basement, so you might want to clean the floor up and those kinds of things. Walls on there, that sort of thing. The technology piece comes out of KCC, so ours is more of the structural piece, and then the dollars that are left over out of that, if there is any continued maybe upgrade in the library, walls, painting inside those kinds of things, and kind of clean that up. Other than that, it's more structural stuff with that. The CTE revitalization is spilling over into our summer project as well. Small engines and welding hardware has been purchased. Currently it's in place. The gas plumbing is, they told me it was 99% finished. We need to put a wall in between the gases, a fireproof wall in between the gases, which is not a huge thing, and enclose that. And then filtering of air and moving of air cleaner will take place in July 2019. We have a drop dead date of August 31st, 2019. My drop dead date is more so August 1st, which is very much attainable given the fact that it's not going to be as much as we thought, as we anticipated it to be. I do know that we have permits in place, or permits applied for, and as soon as that gets issued, Metal Masters will be here, which is something that you guys approved this evening via email a while ago, plus this. So there's more to come on that, but those will be finished. We were successful in rolling over some of those dollars to finish out that revitalization. So we should be, that's a big project that needs to come to an end in the summer of 2019. Next next up is the athletics and activities, if there's no other questions on
Just,
it. Sorry. I'm moving
side
on. Sorry.
Fit CT, but doesn't fit the egg shop. I see the pivot is running.
The pivot is running. So I did, yes, it is running. So we've got a temporary across the creek from the pump to the pivot itself, and it is up and running. I talked to Christy yesterday. It sounded like she is, they're going to keep that pivot running and pasture it. So Holiday Ranches should be getting in there if they haven't already to graze it off for us.
I think that they were waiting, just because Logan swam the creek and helped with the pipe in.
Yeah.
And then, I think it was yesterday or the day before, she had 3 or 4 of them, Logan went, and they needed to build a water gap.
Yeah, they
So
piped
that
it
the
over.
cattle could get water. So
Yeah.
I don't know if they finished that.
They should have. It shouldn't have taken very long to put, because
I think they did it
they remove
maybe
it.
2 days
put it back
ago.
in. Yeah. So I just know that yesterday she came in and talked to Holiday and told him, gave him the green light to come in there and feed it off. So yes, it is up and running. So my maintenance guys went over there with a few of the kids. They made the kids swim the creek and they sat and shouted orders. So it was a successful feat. Now that also, that's not permanent, obviously. We're trying to get the permanent fixtures purchased, so the pipes that would go underneath, that sort of thing, purchased with Measure 98 funds to finish that out.
Do we have to have that money spent by Friday?
Well, I too went in and was sweating bullets. The Measure 98 funds, I got that to roll into the summer as well. But then we were also getting a new batch of Measure 98 funds as well. But I did have a pretty good chunk of change, which that's how they got more Chromebooks. I said, we got some money to spend, please spend it. Just because things came in less than what we anticipated, which is not a bad thing at all. And so purchased Chromebooks, but the permanent solution to the pivot is within those rollover dollars that I got for the summer to roll into, plus have another batch of dollars. So keeping my fingers crossed between that and CT.
I don't want to get us completely sidetracked, but we're almost there, so. Is there a permit process to go underneath the creek?
Yes, and that's the other thing, is we need to run that for a year. So henceforth, the temp, run that for a year, and then apply for that permit process. So it's gonna take a little bit of doing.
Does that permitting process go through Oregon Water Resources or?
It's gonna be several things, because you've got that was in this, habitat, or, I don't think that's the right word.
Probably DEQ for the.
And, yeah, there's some DEQ, so there's gonna be several layers to that.
It was a watershed project at one time, wasn't it?
Watershed, that's
With Marcy Schroeder.
it. Habitat watershed, one of them things.
No chemicals.
Why are we so,
Yeah,
why are we so determined to run
to make it more
Can't,
permanent,
in the ice and
Flood, and wipe it out.
the water coming up over the top.
going up
and
over the
it's
top.
out.
You have to really go up over the top. It's just a much more solid permanent solution.
Yeah.
We get through all that, yeah, we just might not talk about that.
I just want to know it's running. Any other questions or sidetracks or whatever? Okay, so the next one is athletics activities.
And with the overall goal of benefiting our kids emotionally, academically, physically. The seasonal reports that gives, I'll give seasonal reports on participation numbers. I'm going to include in that too our plans of participation numbers, because that's that academic piece where we work with our athletes that are in kind of that probationary period of, you know what, I'm not doing so well in these classes, I've got 4.5 weeks to get my rear end gear. The teachers, athletes that stay after school, so I'm going to include that as well with that. And then also that demographic report at the end of the year, where we part of that overall big picture of our participation. B is for the elementary one. Susan's going to address that.
Real quickly, just as historically, we did apply for a grant last year. We got partway through the process, 35-page application, and we were told that our test scores were not low enough for us to be qualified and to stop putting in any effort to do that. So at that point, we kind of kept our grant committee looking at smaller size after-school grants or specific to the arts or athletics, those kinds of things. But we kind of had an internal discussion that if this was going to happen for our kids, we needed to make it happen. So we have some folks on board that would like to help out with an after-school sports program. We'll start with just 4, 5, 6 next year, and it'll be kind of a 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off each month, because those kids are, we don't want to take those kids out of homework club permanently. They need to get some extra support for teachers that want to provide homework help as well. And we'll collect a small fee like we used to, $3, something like that, and then if kids want to do it, they can't. We'll look to some of our Denny Do Fund and some of those other places in our ASB accounts to help provide that opportunity for those kids. We do have a teacher already that does an after-school art club. We had a choir club after school, but it was all just voluntary. It was not super formal. The kids could sign up for what they'd like. We'd like to make it a little more formal as we get more people involved and maybe find some other funding sources, but we're going to continue to work on that.
So C is reviewing our current facility usage, gyms, classrooms, and such. Both Susan and I used actually Google, and I was just thinking one of the benefits of Google is those shared documents where we have a calendar, we can push that out, and anyone can log in and see that and get information. So that's one of the pluses there. And so Susan and I really tracked that, and I know it was a learning process for me going through the winter and all of the use requests. We put some wording in our handbook about priority usage for which groups would receive priority. And what I'd like to do still, and maybe with Susan as well, is lay out kind of a list of expectations. I know when Susan dealt with doors being popped open and left open, we had different issues as well. But to clarify some of the expectations for facility use and say, hey, if you're going to be using our gym 2 nights a week, this is what we expect you to do.
And then maybe, we also had to impose some consequences as well this year. And they're pretty informal, we just kind of talked through them with Will, but we did have to deny access to some groups just because of security reasons. We just kept having damage and we kept having security issues. We had a computer that was damaged from kids playing on it up on top of the stage at the elementary school. And we can't afford those kinds of costs and incur those kinds of costs. We want to keep our facilities open to the community, but we need to structure that a little bit and make it, tighten that up. So we've drafted some language around it as far as policy, but it isn't in a final draft form for you guys. Working on it.
And then D, professional development opportunities, funded by district grants and partnerships. And there are currently 4 teams and coaches that are using funds to go to camp this summer. Professional development for the coaches is part of that. I talk to a lot of coaches and encourage them to do that kind of thing. With coach turnover, a lot of them are experienced in that realm, and so some are surprised, that's an option for me, or we can help kids go to camp, we can motivate them by helping offer to pay for that. And so that's been a pleasant surprise where a couple coaches have taken me on that and said, yeah, let's do that, let's get this together so we can go. Over the summer, 5 teams. Some numbers have even grown with additional signups for camp. It's partially being funded by some of these teams.
One of the things on this coach evaluation, one of the things that we talked about at some point, I think last year, and I don't know that it ever happened, I didn't ever see one, but, which doesn't mean it's not somewhere in his locker or something like that. I know that we talked about that at the end of the season, to have not necessarily a formal coach evaluation, but maybe a feedback or something so that the coaches could get some feedback from parents basically as to things. And it was like after the season's over, so it's not a mid-season complaint because Johnny's not getting enough playing time kind of thing. I know that we talked about that, but then I don't know that that ever really happened.
Not with my coaches. I would almost leave that up to the coach. know if they were seeking that. I did my evaluations of the coaches and met with all the head coaches. And we discussed, you know, challenges with parents, challenges with athletes, challenges
Right.
with schedule, things like that, and travel. There was a goal that we took out that was a parent survey for all activities in sports. And
Okay,
that's
maybe
what you're
that's what it
referring
was that we
to.
had talked about.
Well, I
And-
think some of the discussion is maybe not necessarily parents giving feedback to the coaches, but your feedback would incorporate age parents' feedback. Because there's kind of a missing link there. I mean, you may be giving them feedback based upon what you're seeing or experiencing, but there may be other feedback out there that's never comes to the surface.
I worry about having parents evaluate the
Yeah.
coaches.
Well, and I don't know that it needs to be an evaluation, but
I
the
thought
other.
the board got advised to not get down that road too.
Yeah, I don't remember.
I don't remember. I think Steve Kelly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
He did.
I missed, I've yet to go to a meeting.
I still think that, like I said, I don't think any decision should be based upon parent feedback, but I think that's a group of people that are around that may see things or hear things that otherwise don't come out. And I think it should be, a personal opinion, I think somehow there needs to be a process to incorporate, but it needs to be weighted appropriately within the overall feedback of the group.
Well,
I
and I
think Lane
think-
and I, go ahead, Cory.
Well, the one side of it is, we have this formal process about if we're unhappy with a coach, that we go to the coach first, and then you go to the coach with the kid, and then if you're not satisfied there, they go to you. And I don't know that this feedback, or whatever you want to call it, needs to be something that formal, as opposed to, here are some things that, I felt were problematic. Whatever you do with them, throw them in the trash or take them. Because sometimes I think that maybe there's a little bit of a disconnect as to where the coaches are, and thinking that something went really well as compared to where it is. And it's maybe not something that is to the point that you need to elevate it to, a formal complaint of some sort. Which when you go the coach process with the kid, and if you don't think that's good, then they go there. I mean, that's a fairly formal, this was more of an idea of,
Well, I think when you get into the 360 evaluation, and you send out the survey to your peers and people that you supervise and around, and it gets told in a seat. Obviously, some of it's gonna get read, it's kind of anonymous. It's just a part of self-reflection, I guess, in a sense of, is there something that I'm doing out here that isn't setting well with those around? It isn't a bitch session, for parents to try, and there's a formal process for formal complaint. It's just, there is a huge, the user group of that coach is the players and their parents.
Well,
So are you guys looking for this to be added to the goals?
well, no, I
Is
just
this
know
just
that
a-
we had talked about this, but then, and I thought we talked about it like last summer potentially. And then I didn't ever really see anything more.
Well, again, I thought we were directed to steer away from stuff. Dennis and Steve Kelly.
Yeah. I don't know if I've heard of Steve Kelly.
I think he was here, he came here, did kind
We had a board training.
of training, yeah.
Yeah, they
It's
had,
been
he had all
over,
kinds of
but
things.
it's been over a year ago, so it might have been like when you first started. It's been a little while since we've
I
seen
don't,
it.
I don't know, I could go either way, but I guess just in the middle, you figure what worked well and what didn't. Yeah, you don't leave a lot of room, you don't ask a lot of questions, what worked well and what didn't.
I guess part of me too, we have a process, we seriously have a problem when you go to that coach and you talk.
Well, I guess the issue though is what if it's not,
But obviously.
it's not to the point that you wanna go and make a formal complaint and make a stink about it.
You should still be able to go have a conversation.
That's easier said than done sometimes, Barry. And you're taking from a different perspective in your years of coaching. And you're just now rolling into the years of being the parent on the coaching side. But there's a lot of, you know, it's a touchy fine line as to where you stay and what is.
I think the hardest part though, Mrs. Price, is parents and community members see 1/5 or less of the interactions between the coach and the athlete. They see the game.
They see the
and
game.
They see the game. They do
And they're
not see-
emotional.
Yeah, all the emotionals and everything that cranks into that emotional piece of it. They don't see the hours spent in the practice rooms or in the hallways if it's an on-staff coach, in the gym, on the field stuff that's made and all the growth that's made there. They evaluate it on one thing, the game. Whether it's the score of the game, the playing time of the game, the calls, the offense, the defense, the strategies or whatever. And I really get frustrated when it was more so this year, when parents feel that they have more power of what our coaches do than our coaches are administrators. And that, I think opening that door, because I've now rolled through it, because now I've been a coach, I've been an AD, I've been a building principal, and now I'm a parent, and I'm a husband of a coach. I think right now, we need to focus more on what it is to be a teammate and what it is to be an athlete, and where did that respect piece go away of it through the proper communications and problem solving when there is an issue that doesn't fit right. And I've had these conversations with my own son when he comes home. He goes, "I'm not playing that game for that guy or that sport or doing that ever again." I go, "Well, go talk to the coach." "Well, I ain't gonna talk to him." I go, "If you're not gonna talk to him, then you're the problem, not the coach." And I think that type of conversation is not being had anymore. Instead, we either are on a social media site or we're calling the 4 board members instead of saying, go back to the process. Young man, young woman, you need to step up and go talk to your coach. And if that's not working, we will support you on that piece. If we're not teaching our children how to problem solve and communicate and work with that, I guarantee it, we're gonna be back to where we're at, where a week before the program starts, we're trying to find a coach.
That's a quarter of our coaches have resigned already this year.
I mean, AYS as a teacher would say is third pay, which is coach, parents cheer. It's just, you know, I mean, you bring a good point.
I think, I agree with Wayne on that, for whatever reason. But, I know that in my household, if there was a problem on the floor, you better go talk to the coach, because I'm not going. Because it's problem-solving skills for these kiddos, you know, as far as I was concerned. Now, that doesn't mean that there's a huge problem and we didn't, you know, we did step in, but very rarely did we ever get to that. Maybe once, maybe. But I think you have to circle those kids back around and say, okay, you've got to talk this through. That's my perspective. Whatever it's worth.
So I'm mixed on this, I mean, I don't know where that would be better, but.
Rabbit hole.
I also know with parents, keep them at arm's length, and then it's gonna dust up into a big issue and be a bitch session. Bring them in to part of the process. Hear them. That may be as far as it goes. And I'm not an advocate for the coach sitting down and the parents getting to tell coach what they think, but personally don't see a problem with, after the season, reaching out to that user group, to that group of parents, and saying, any feedback for the coach when they do their evaluation.
What was good, what was bad.
But we don't do it for teachers, and that's our main job as a school district.
Well, we should.
Then I say we do it for teachers first, because that's what we should be doing first and foremost. I think it's, not that I don't value input or making sure we hold
Well, and
our
I think
coaches
that's part of
accountable,
the
but
problem
if we
is,
have too much
as
focus
a
on athletics.
parent group, you get pushed to the side that, and I'm not saying that I know better than the coach, but sometimes I think things happen that the coach doesn't really sometimes realize what's happening. And as a coach, you probably don't agree with that.
No, I hear you. I miss a lot of things.
And
But if nobody comes and tells us, stays at arm's length until it blows up, then you have two groups of people that are frustrated because it was never brought to attention. If a kiddo comes home and says, Mom or Dad, I am upset because I didn't get reps in practice, you need to go talk to coach. Do you want me to go with you to talk to coach? Do you want me to call coach and ask coach to have a meeting with you? But you gotta go talk to coach. If we're not teaching our kiddos to go talk to coach and work it out, how are they gonna get
Well,
those soft skills?
I don't think that having an evaluation at the end of the season is deterring your kid from not dealing with their problem during the season when it's happening. So it's fine.
I guess I also, our process is slow. Formal process can be slow. If your kid's doing good in practice, you know, I'm gonna just say football, no basis, it's just hypothetical. Football is good in practice, coach said, yeah, good job. And then just isn't getting in the game or anything else and hasn't been. He comes to me and said, well, maybe it was just the game, maybe it was a situation. I would not encourage him at that point to go talk to the coach. Because it's one incident. The next time, okay, that was two, but is it time to go talk to the coach yet? I don't know. Then you get to the third game and it happens again. Well, we just looked at the schedule, there's 7 games, 8 games. So now you're at the third game, you're talking to the coach. The fourth game, it doesn't happen again. Now the parent goes talk to the coach. Fifth game, it doesn't happen again. Now it's the parents talking to the athletic director. The season's over. The process is too slow in those activities that have limited times of evaluation.
I'm not interested in that. I would not want to facilitate an end of the season parent, coach, how to go session. Period. I would not want to do that.
Well, and that's fine, Barry. You've been a coach and I haven't been, and so we'll just leave it at that.
It's fine.
It's fine, we don't have to. I brought it up because it said coach evaluation. So let's let it be.
On a grander scheme though, I think you can send out school surveys all the way around and have a small piece in it that just talks about what's going well, what's not. But you need to evaluate programs across the board and give your parents opportunity to talk about the music program, the FFA program, teachers. And we're required to do it at the elementary level because we're a Title I school. So we have a survey that goes out every fall no matter what. And we take that into consideration and we do some planning from it. But I think you're opening up a huge can of worms to just target athletics because that gives no voice to any of these other parents either. And it really just continues to stir the pot that we've already got.
That's fine, I'm
stirred
done.
up. So-
That'd be.
Actually,
But that would be a way to get feedback for,
overall, inclusive
overall, you could do technology.
survey for our entire school district and everything would be.
Early release, throw it on.
I'm just
Open
saying,
the door.
I was just on a training. Who was I with?
it's just an option, an idea to provide some feedback.
I'm sure
Has
it'll
the
be
climate
there.
survey symbol.
Oh.
Oh, advanced ed, so our advanced ed accreditation program. They have a climate, well, they have a survey making tool, so they have pre-made surveys, but then you can also build your own questions into it. And surveys, there's climate surveys, teaching surveys, whatever's all there. It's there.
I think the frustration here on the board though is we don't get any complaints about those things, like you're mentioning, you know, the school things. We get the complaints 9 times out of 10 about athletics. I received 2 of them last week.
But if we have information, because we do get complaints about buildings, technology, teaching all the time. And if we can sit down as a team with admin and bring proposals to solve several of these problems all at once. We're moving forward as a whole district and not just in one area. And I know you guys take the brunt of the athletic complaints, but that shows that we're being proactive and also providing equality to all of these issues. Just thoughts.
That was a good discussion.
And I think that we need to be careful in how we do that, because, I mean, it's with segregating something specific versus, you know, say for example, the teachers versus the athletics type of situation. I think we gotta be careful with that, just with today's society in the first place. So on the whole, if you're gonna do it, on the whole, you're probably better off than rather specific this, that, or the other. I mean,
Well, on the other side of that, do we have and we have this, everywhere I've ever worked, we have this, where when somebody leaves, be it a teacher or a coach, they have an exit evaluation as to, you know, what was good, what was bad, was there a real problem I was leaving for? Is it because your parents in Lakeview are a huge pain in my ass? So I don't want to coach anymore here? You know, what is it?
right.
That'd be good.
But then you hate to get to the exit interview to find out that the parents were a pain in the ass. You know, I mean, you hate to get to that because you can maybe do something to implement to help alleviate that or just provide some support.
That's it for athletics and activities. Number 5 is community relations.
This is a hard one to follow. So community relations, our committee has a couple parents on the committee. So I'm not sure the other committees do, but community relations does that, okay. And so it's really to recognize the importance of our partnerships with our community and how we can provide a well-rounded education experience to our students. So the first one is to continue to support with our medical community in Lake County, including our health occupations and then the community at large. So Ms. Denninger's programs still maintain an excellent relationship with the Lake District Hospital.
And does that program have a specific name?
It's her, I think it's her health occupations. Is that what they call it?
And I would suggest putting health occupations.
Patients there, sure.
program.
Instead of just program.
Yeah, I mean, there's no other individual listed anywhere in the goals.
And then take out the teacher?
Yes.
Okay, okay. And then mental health continues to provide services in our schools. As Ms. Warner mentioned earlier, mental health is restructured this year. The Wellness Center, they've even moved, and they're in different buildings. And so we met as an admin team with their administrative team earlier in the year, and we just need to move forward. And we have some ideas about how to move forward and providing counseling services either to our families out in the community or in our buildings, but it probably will be for individual students, but we're just still in the planning process right now. We also reach out to them if we have any school-wide emergencies, and we'll continue to do that. I know that the ESD has a program for any, you know, school-wide or community or county-wide emergencies, and so they have a team, and so then I know mental health sits on that team. And then, so our district, along with all of the county and the Lake County ESD, are gonna have a school nurse in our buildings next year. The ESD is paying for that, and so we've worked with the hospital this year on providing that more with our real high-risk students that need medical protocols, whether it's seizures or diabetes or different things, and then they'll do other things as their time permits as well. They do training for our staff with medication. If any kids need medication when they go on trips, like athletic trips or field trips, they would provide that same training to the coaches or the staff members that are taking kids.
Also be nice to have a school nurse on IEPs, especially if the student has a medical condition, so that you have that professional piece help like the IEP goals, medical procedures, seizures, diabetic diet, whatever.
Everything. Right, and then the training on that with the local doctors. The other thing is that we're gonna we need to call nurses in our schools. Mr. Twait was really adamant about that because they're not school nurses, they're RNs, and they have training, and they've gone to some school nurse trainings, but we have to make sure that there's a licensing through TSPC, so we have to be really careful not to call them school nurses. And so we have to be careful, and I haven't even mentioned that, I'm not.
So will we be in the buildings all day, or
No,
no, certain
we-
days and they'll come in and visit?
Certain days and come in and visit. Probably we see a lot of need in the fall to get things started, and then we'll plan throughout. They'll help us with some of our like medical fragile reporting, because there's some dollars that we can claim there and different things. So they're gonna do some stuff like that as well. But usually in the beginning is when we have students or when new students come in, and so I'm not sure how we're gonna divide it for the whole county. And it'll be through public health, and so that's how we're gonna start, because public health is with the district hospital now, and so we've had the public health nurses this year in our schools. So it's been helpful.
Some of the opportunity, I'm sure we all do it to some extent, but some have better knowledge than others, just looking from a preventative standpoint and keep the norovirus spreading through or something that's gonna shut down our facility.
Do you want, and I can put, we didn't really spell out, but I'll make sure that we look at preventative as well. And my hope is that we can get more time after the first year and kind of look at the needs. So. And then our CTE curriculum, I think there is a CT advisory committee, is there? Yeah. So I think the plan, and the committee talked about this with Mr. Cahill, was working together on how to do more of the job shadowing and the mentoring and on-site with the Measure $98. And I know that we have kind of tagged with the mentor program at the ESD, but I think we need to reach out and be a little bit different there. So how are we gonna work to expand that program? And then to continue to use district webpage, Facebook page, school messengers, the district for parents. The parents on our committee really liked the school messenger program. They felt that it was very useful, it was helpful, they just really appreciated that. And so that was good to hear. The increased communication with the local paper. Everybody on the committee felt that the local paper has done a great job in really focusing on the schools and their athletics, and how can we include some more things, and how do we get more information on other activities and maybe some more of the middle school activities. But they really appreciate you, not just because you're here.
I do what I can.
And then also that improved communication with for the building principals and the superintendent for newsletters for the district or building newsletters, website, and maybe just on their website. And they're going to use, staff locator, with directories and calendar updates. We've had some parents really request, how do I email the teachers directly? And so if they go into that parent viewer, it's not always user-friendly straight to the email, so we want to increase that so that parents can have easy access to emails to their teachers.
So when you're in the grades, I thought there was a link.
Well, that link has been going to Outlook, and so we've talked to LBL about changing that because I think that's been kind of a barrier. Is that what
Yeah,
you're
most
saying?
of, I've seen that too, just looking for other athletic context, it always opens up Outlook.
Yeah, and so that's kind of a barrier to ours. We'd just like for it to be able to pop up into our teachers' emails. And then I know that calendar updates is always a work in progress. I think there's a lot of things going on. There's lots of changes. And then the school supply list, I think those will be on this summer. The paper also puts out a great back to school brochure, magazine on everything. We provide that. Well, not we, Tandy provides that to the newspaper. So that's good information as well.
I know that not every, here to go back to athletics again, not every coach is tech savvy, but I think some of the best as a parent experiences in an athletic program was when the coach had did you have a Facebook page for football, or was that the previous one?
My previous.
But you just, you could get on that.
Yeah, 411 apps, nice, that reminds 411.
We're having, this practice or hog feed coming. Used this last year, I don't know.
Mr. Stupak did it for me.
Well, I don't know that I ever caught on it, so my son would not be home, and I was like, well, it's hog feed.
That's the other thing that I really like about School Messenger that I don't think that we utilize is our teachers, our coaches can put their groups of kids and then they can just send out, or they could even put groups of parents and send information out. And I think that we've talked about that as an admin team, that we can move forward with that. We've used it for real, general push out to all families, but how can we group that? And then people don't have to use their personal phones. And they can use that for communication as well as, they can communicate and parents can.
And I would think that if coach or teacher was sending a group text to kids, then it would be double to a parent's number as well.
And we can put that in there, yeah.
It just seems like the older my kids got, the less they can look at. I don't know if that's just me.
I just want to think of the driver's license.
We dabbled in this and that our because we're behind the high school by quite a bit, and so when the 6th grade field trip was rolling in at 9 o'clock, they used School Messenger just as a test. And our normal archaic system is we put a note on the door. We tape a note on the door that says this is when we think the bus will be in, give or take 30 minutes. But they did it by School Messenger, and it all went really smooth to have that bus roll in with parents there. So we're getting there. It's just slow, but we're behind the high school by quite a bit that way.
And then F is continued involvement with student groups and students for community service. Our partnership with Forest Service, BLM, Medical Community, USF, is that Fish and Wildlife? Okay. The Watershed Council, OSU, Food Corps. Also our leadership groups, Student Council, FFA, I know Honor Society, and the Honors Diploma kids have done tutoring. They've also done other things out in the community, different service clubs. And then there continues to be a need for maybe some childcare programs after school from about 2:30 to 3. And so possibly providing some support to the elementary students waiting for their siblings at DMS or LHS. I think that one thing I realized from our committee was a lot of the people didn't know some of the things that are going on, like the homework club that the teachers at the elementary schools are just jumping in and doing, or as well as, is it the Good News, or they call it something different now?
The Super Book Club.
Super Book Club on Wednesdays.
Early release to catch those latchkey kids.
And they have a lot of, I've been through that gym and they've got a lot of kids.
About 50 or so.
Yeah.
Well, that might change some if we implement after school program.
I would love to partner with them a little bit. I'd also like to have gym space sometimes for different trainings. But it's faith-based, so we've just treated it as facility use as a separate club. But they could certainly be a component as long as we kind of keep that at arm's length and just do facility use for them. They like the Wednesdays because they have a big enough block of time and they get their volunteers together versus our after-school stuff is pretty much just half an hour because so many of our kids are on the buses. It works well for us to just do 2:30 to 3 for after-school stuff and then get on the bus.
Okay, do you guys want to add anything or have any questions?
I have a question about it.
Back to playing basketball.
I pointed at you.
Yeah, it's a 10 days.
Yeah.
So with the minor changes that you guys have requested, are you guys happy with this? Can we go back to that possibly be on the July agenda?
Bring it back for a final draft in July, you think?
Yeah.
And we'll work on some of that.
The minor stuff that you guys have suggested. Okay,
Sounds good.
sweet.
Okay, 13.2, student, parent, staff handbooks.
Where would you like to start? Mine's first the handbook. Would you like me to go first?
Yeah, would you please go first, Ms. Warren?
Okay. The cover sheet says parent handbook notes, and that was just, I need to put parent student handbook notes. This doesn't look, I know it's thick, but it's not as bad as what it looks like. So, now, for Mr. Schulenberger, the parent student handbook is very plain. You will not, you don't see any cutesy stuff on it. There's no teddy bears, no nothing. So there will be some cutesy stuff when it goes to print and a cute cover.
Did I grab that?
Last year, it just was a question and it was just cute. It was fun. Okay.
Take all that
So let's,
foo stuff out of there.
well, and that's kind of setting the tone for this. So I'd like to preface this by saying that I've experienced, and I've talked with Will multiple times about some of the escalated behaviors that we are starting to see at the elementary level. We used to see much more of this kind of stuff, that's pretty serious stuff, at the high school level. And we're seeing more and more of it, especially where we have sixth graders in our elementary buildings. So the majority of the changes in the elementary handbook are just pulling high school language from the high school handbook down to stuff that's applicable. There may be a little extra stuff in there, but every time you don't put something in here, it happens that year and you're going, I don't have a whole lot of policy to stand on. So let's roll through this real quick and just stop me when you have questions. Pages 1 through 3, there's a letter to the, or page 1, it's just an updated letter to parents. And then a table of contents. And then the elementary handbook didn't ever have the school district motto and vision and some board policy and kind of how board policies work. And so I just added those from the high school handbook for you. And then 6 through 8 are essentially just updates to the supply list. And then also staff, that will get updated again when I'm done hiring. I'm just about done. But as soon as I have all those hires done and then you guys have approved them, I'll finish that up. But they're fairly complete right now. And then page 11 doesn't, for our scheduling, doesn't have any updates. 12, the update is under requirements for registration. And what is problematic and what's happening is that we're getting kindergartners into our systems. No one is providing birth certificates for those kinders. And then by the time that we can get those birth certificates from those parents, we may be October, November, and we've had a kid attending that is legally not able to attend. And it's become problematic enough that I wanted to put some language in here for parents to understand that it really is important that those birth certificates are in a timely manner. 13 and 14 don't have any updates. 15, I had a sixth grader this year with 70 tardies and not a whole lot of policy to stand on. So I pulled the policy and just revamped it a little bit. Sometimes I had to just reword things slightly to make them fit to the elementary because we didn't have, we don't have detentions every period, right? Or tardies every period. We have one tardy in the morning and that's it. So some of that's just a little bit of a change.
That's on 15.
Yes. 16 and 17 don't have any updates. 18, this hasn't really come up, but I just thought it needed cleaned up a little bit, and I just put a distinction in there that grades K1-2 is standards-based report card. It's a continuum. For example, when your child, they don't get an A, B, or a C for if they can count to 100 because it's a progression of child development. They show where they're at in meeting the standard. Can they meet that standard to count to 100 yet? And then the rest of the grades on up are using A, B, C, D, E, F system, and I just pulled some of that as well and made some distinctions for that. And then page 19, what sometimes happens is that if you put too many criteria into your presidential academic awards that we give in 5th grade for gold and silver, we can have a child that passes a test but has horrible grades or horrible attendance but passes a couple of tests, and we beef that up to make it a little more, a little harder to attain because it is an academic achievement award. And so at the teacher's request in 5th grade, I just made the criteria that they needed to meet 3 of those criteria versus 2. And I know that this seems odd a little, but I did want to put in a display of affection pulled from the high school handbook, LHS DMS, so that I had to deal with a little less of it. And then on our pages 20 through 27, those are revised policies that are all pulled from the DMS LHS handbook. There's not anything that's a big surprise because you guys have seen it before. We have had some internet use issues with kids viewing sites that they shouldn't. And they do sign that internet use form, but parents breeze through it on the registration and they need to be responsible for what they have signed. So I just threw in there search and seizure. We've had some of those issues. Freedom of expression, not too much. Parent-school complaint procedure was standard in there before. So was student discipline forms. But the general discipline guidelines have never been in the elementary school handbook. They've been in district policy and the high school handbook, but we've never had, and that's the majority of what the rest of this is, the whole system of suspension, detention, suspension, and expulsion. And we had a kiddo that came close to the expulsion piece of this year, and I thought, well, better to be out ahead of it and a little more proactive than not. And we also have restraint and seclusion that I added, bullying, intimidation, harassment, drugs and alcohol, and these are all policy pulled right out of the high school, unless there was something that was different to the elementary school. So then when we get to page 27, student interviews is the only thing I think I added out of that, and the rest is all elementary school specific that has been in there, no updates on pages 28 and 29. And then the form pages, there were no revisions.
Seems like it made it just easier to include 6th grade in the middle school.
It would have taken less typing, I can tell you that. But, you know, I want to train my 5th and 6th graders too, especially in the world of tardy, bringing things to school that are inappropriate, the internet use. This is what they're going to see at the 7th grade level. We might as well, and I know that seems a little odd in elementary maybe to have search and seizure and some of those things, but I am experiencing some of that in the disciplinary piece of that. So, questions about that handbook? Okay, the staff handbook looks even scarier, but it's not. Okay, pages 1 through 4 are simply just the new calendar and staff updates, like we talked about, that will be updated again as soon as I'm done hiring. Page 5, there are no updates. Pages 6 through 11 are our standard response protocol, and I update those every year to just put in new names of who may be sweeping bathrooms, who's responsible for locking doors, those kinds of things, so they automatically get updated. 12 through 17 have no updates this year. And then pages 18 through 44, staff come to me on a regular basis asking me about policy and asking me about rules and things, and they don't take time always to read this parent-student handbook. So I included it in the staff handbook to go through with my staff at a staff meeting, because I think they need to understand where we're coming from as admin and district so that they can be on board with that. Sometimes it's just a lack of communication on my part, and they don't read it, and I want to force that knowledge to be embedded in their heads. And then pages 45 and 46 are some forms for staff, a refocus form and a discipline form, and there are no updates for that.
Nice job.
If you have questions, you're welcome to read this, and then we can meet later if you have questions too, if you want to email me when you've read all 150
I
pages.
see the school board meeting schedule in there, do you, or is that just the calendar?
It's just the instructional calendar because that's all we had approved at that time.
Okay. So we still have the school board meeting calendar to go through tonight. That's not in this.
It won't be.
It won't.
No, I don't.
I didn't look at it super hard. I did look.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was confused. I thought you wanted it added into my my handbooks.
I'm
and
just
I
saying it
normally
could be
don't.
subject to change if there's any discussion. Not that.
Sorry, I was just confused.
Yes,
Ready?
Yep.
So you know, kind of the process, me and Mr. Rose started at the start of the year flagging and writing stuff that we wanted to change. And then we held a meeting with a handful of teachers. Was there 5 other teachers besides us? And we went through it the first time, and that's the orange one, with the orange sticky notes was the first one. And then we went through it again, that's the pink sticky notes. So we've gone through it many times, and I noticed that he and I both are taking notes on stuff that we may possibly should change it for next year. Before we get started, does anybody want an old handbook? The current one?
I wanna know what page we're on.
Okay, so we're gonna start on page 1. So you're looking at this, these are the changes that I sent you. Did you see that page? There's 89 of them.
So are you
It's in
looking
your
at
board
the
packet.
DMS student handbook?
So is it like
So-
page 138 on
Yes.
the net?
Yeah, 138 is for each.
Cover,
I'm still trying to get out of
Down.
cover
change
change.
year
I think-
2019.
It says 143 on mine in the
Oh,
board
no, I'm
packet.
still.
So
Your changes
one-
are before it though.
And the changes should be right before it.
So 138 is where this one starts.
So 138 is where the changes start.
Yep.
There's approximately 89 changes.
I'm there.
Okay? So do you want me to read through the changes or just flip through the handbook page by page?
I would go for the changes.
Awesome. So I'm gonna go through the changes, stop me if you have one. Change 1 is the cover page. We added the crest. And then on the second page, we put the honker on it. So we got the crest on the front page. So that's just a change.
That's the touchy-feely stuff.
Just the touchy-feely stuff for Barry.
But it won't be printed in color, will it? That's a huge cost, Martin. We're gonna have to talk about that. I saw him do whatever he does.
Changes 4s and 5s are formatting. So I'm gonna go to the big change on page 7, dress and grooming. On page 7 on dress and grooming, we are adding holes in the pants. Holes in the pants have to be below the fingertip. Because we
Yes.
currently have holes in the pants and the crotch and above the fingertip, where we're seeing skin and undergarments. Now, some girls are wearing, for lack of a better, like a spandex, and that's all right. But if we're seeing what I would call underwear or skin and holes in the pants, we're gonna ask them to do something.
There's a whole array of faces up here.
So,
What?
you know,
Where are
the
these?
tears that jeans you see here, the tears
I
that
see
jeans.
it started to come.
Now the
It's
tears
started
that
to come.
jeans are here.
So,
I've
I
seen
All the
the
way
pockets out on the shorts, so I'm aware of that.
she says hole in pants must be below the reach of the fingertips.
Fingertips, just
Like
like,
then you're saying that if they have something
Spandex.
underneath it, it's all right.
as long as we're not seeing the skin. So it's,
But what if you're seeing their underwear?
then,
So I guess I'm questioning is, there need to be some clarification on that, because he's saying that one thing, and I don't know how you would clarify
I think,
How about just no holes in your pants?
well, unfortunately,
dress.
unfortunately,
Apparently
it is the end. I think we can put some clarifying in there unless, how do we write that?
because you're seeing
No
undergarments
skin
are
showing
okay.
above your fingertips.
Or just have it where those holes have to be below the fingertips, whether they have
Right.
leggings on or not.
I think we're gonna say
Yeah.
that. I think
Just
we're-
literally.
You don't wanna get into the
Seriously,
underwear
it's
versus
just-
And we're not gonna send, it is hard as a male to be the dress Nazi because 80% of it is female issues, okay? If it's a guy, it's usually a t-shirt that has a beer or a sexual thing on it. And so it is really tough. And so usually we're asking Brandy or somebody to help us out. But most of the time we don't send them home. We ask them to change or we politely say, don't wear that again. And usually we do not get repeat offenders. And the holes in the pants are gonna be a tough one because that is a fashion piece that is rampant right now. But it's gotten to where it's just obnoxious.
It'll go away soon. It's ugly.
I just bring up that the implementation may be a little bit tougher than the black and white statement. That I wouldn't say change it for this year, but it might be something to keep in your mind that it has to
See
be
how it works this year.
Okay,
elaborated on.
page 7 on electronic devices.
Yeah, next year.
We ramped that up to also allow, to say headphones. We also said electronic devices cannot be used in the hallways or in the offices. Because what happens is we'll have kiddos who are in trouble, and they'll go sit in the office and they're looking at their phone. I'm just trying to, right now, probably 80% of the stuff that comes across Mr. Rose's desk is a discipline issue. results through some sort of social media or whatever. We shouldn't be on it, our teachers should be on it, our subs should be on it, nobody should be on their phones during instruction time. And there is a piece in there that says teachers can let the kiddos use it if it's an instructional purpose. Because sometimes it's faster to get your phones out and Google or look something up or ask Siri. But we're ramping up on the less use of electronic devices in the building. Page 7 also we're hall passes, and Mr. Cahill talked to Mr. Rose and I routinely this year how much he appreciated and was amazed how quiet the halls were. I still think that there's a little bit more to it. Formatting on the page 8, some formatting issues. Go to page 12.
Can we go back to electronic devices
Yes,
real
sir.
quick? So, I get that, sounds great. So they may be confiscated by school district personnel. Is
Yeah.
that elaborated on in the staff handbook?
Yeah.
It is, okay.
We'll double check on it, but we talk about it at the start of the year, and we just tell them, take it for the period, or send it to the office and look them up, saying they could pick it up at the end of the day.
Okay, I just would be concerned about being took and it's longer than a period and sitting on a desk and then somebody comes in and gives me a new phone. And then what kind of liability that may open up us as a school district for $700,000 phones. That either if it's gonna be taken for more than a period, if it's not given back at the end of that period, then it probably needs to go to the office.
Yes.
And that's the practice we want.
Just wanna make sure that's elaborated on somewhere. in
Yeah,
staff
that's a good
part
point.
of
That
it.
actually happened to Fletcher. He got his phone taken away, and Chris and I had a conversation about this. There was a sub that day, and she took it for the entire day, and he went by that room and he saw his phone on her